Hello everyone, here's what's coming up tonight on News Center Now. Maine schools threatened by their own students.
It's not something that can be joked about because nobody ever thinks this is going to happen to their school.
What's the difference between a social media joke and terrorizing? It's a conversation police say parents need to have with their kids.
And can money buy you happiness? To a certain extent, the answer is actually yes. Keith Carson will explain in Braindrops.
There are people in our community that know what happened or have a piece of information.
Why are nearly half of Portland's homicides over the last decade unsolved? Our investigative series continues.
This is News Center Now.
Threats against Maine schools in the last week. Hello everyone, I'm Lindsay Mills.
And I'm Lee Goldberg. According to school administrators and police, officials investigated threats against Lake Region Middle School, Coney High School, and Caribou Middle School. That was all on Tuesday. Yesterday, a student was arrested at South Portland High School charged with terrorizing. And this morning, 2 threats in Topsom against Woodside Elementary and Mount Ararat High School. And the superintendent of RSU 57 says they investigated multiple incidents this week, including a Snapchat threat against Massabesic Middle School. Officials say it is time to have a conversation with your kids about these threats, social media, and school safety.
I spoke with one parent who is doing just that.
It's really important that parents really chat with their children and talk with their children about this. This is not an appropriate joke.
A stern message from York County Sheriff William King Jr. in the wake of this week's school shooting in Florida, and now several active terrorizing investigations across the state and in the county he serves. A letter home to parents Friday from RSU 57 Superintendent Larry Malone states the district looked into incidents at the middle school and high school. In one of those cases, involving a 7th grader and a reported threat made on Snapchat.
We do believe at this point it was just some ill-conceived jokes at this point.
The sheriff's office investigated the threat and will now refer the case to the district attorney's office.
It does appear to be almost copycat. It's just not appropriate.
My heart just sank.
Kelly Emerson read those 2 emails from school officials and knew she had to talk with her daughter about this type of behavior on Snapchat and the consequences it can have.
If your friends are doing it, you need to tell somebody.
She says it's up to parents to have these conversations with their kids.
There are kids obviously proven out there that they're willing to go out there and shoot. I feel like there's a breakdown with communication between parents and their kids and teachers and students.
Have a kitchen table conversation, not to joke around about this stuff. And for the kids that are coming forward and they're reporting this stuff, kudos to them.
Every school official we spoke to said they are proud of the kids who came forward and reported these threats.
All of these threats happened in the same week as the school shooting in Florida that killed 17 staff and students. The FBI revealed today that there were more warning signs Nikolas Cruz may have been capable of mass murder. Someone who knew Cruz called the FBI weeks ago and directly stated that the 19-year-old owned guns, had a desire to kill people, and had the potential to carry out a school shooting. The FBI admits it did not follow proper protocol, that the tip was never passed on to the Miami office, so it was not properly investigated.
Other top headlines tonight. Special investigator Robert Mueller filed criminal charges against 13 Russian nationals and 3 businesses for meddling in the 2016 presidential election. They submitted indictments. The submitted indictments range from conspiracy to identity theft.
The American Red Cross of Maine is down hundreds of blood donations that could definitely help save lives, partially because of the ongoing flu epidemic.
Chris Costa, these donations are critical for people in emergency care at the hospital. Is that right?
Yeah, Lee and Lindsay, but they're also important for people who are battling life-threatening diseases like cancer. One family says those donations were life-changing for their son.
Hey, come on.
Jacob Thompson's family is taking time out of the spotlight.
Some people know the story, but they might not know the whole story.
Nobody's in trouble.
The little boy's story drew national attention as the 10-year-old battled stage 4 high-risk neuroblastoma at Maine Medical Center.
He was a fighter, that one.
He was a fighter.
During treatment, he received more than 100 blood transfusions, donations that his parents say brought them unexpected moments.
And have a good Thanksgiving.
When the transfusion was just about done, you know, just the last bit coming through the line, it's like someone turned on a light.
He was running and playing ball being his normal self again. It just made me so happy, and you know, I wanted to go out there and play with him too.
Jacob died last November after a nearly 4-year battle with cancer. The Red Cross of Maine is struggling to get blood donations now because of the flu, a drop of 15 to 20% of donors in the last week. They have a new weapon to fight that, a new Bloodmobile.
It's going to give us the ability to get into some communities that we haven't been to before.
And you don't have to worry about those.
Volunteers train on the equipment now made available on a bus instead of inside a community center.
You know, now we have the time, and it's time to give back and pay it forward.
Yep, in Jacob's honor.
Now Jacob's parents are planning a blood drive of their own because what they got was more than a donation. It was a gift.
And we'll be glad to tell them, you know, all about our wonderful boy. You know, what a difference, you know, giving blood today would have made for him.
Yeah.
And will make for, you know, somebody who's going to get the blood.
Now, the blood drive in Jacob's honor takes place on the 4-year anniversary of his diagnosis. It's on Tuesday, February 20th, beginning at 10 a.m. and going until 3 p.m. at the Clarion Hotel on Congress Street in Portland. It will be his father, Roger's, first time giving blood. And they want as many people to be there as possible. We have provided the link to register for that blood drive on our website. Lee and Lindsay.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. It's certainly a fantastic cause, and to do it in Jacob's memory, hopefully a lot of people lined up outside the door there on Tuesday morning.
Live like a penguin.
Absolutely. So this is a state with a relatively low crime limit, but one main city and half of all homicides from the last decade are still unsolved.
We're looking to improve. But at this point, there isn't any glaring shortfall that we need to address.
We find out why the Portland Police Department struggles to catch killers.
All right, today's Brain Drops, often sought after question, does money buy happiness? And the answer is, to some degree. There's a satiation point in which earning more money actually decreases your happiness. what do you think that is?
Like
what do you think that number is? Per person, per year.
I would say...
we need quicker guesses because we have
$250,000.
Okay, no, it's a lot lower than that.
I was going to say $35,000.
Let's go down to the chart here. It depends on where you are. Of course, North America, $105,000. Let's go to the graph here. And what I want to show you is an interesting point that they thought might be the case. This is the first time they've shown it with data, that it actually starts decreasing when you get to a certain level of income. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Most of the time, they're not giving out salaries over $150,000 for jobs that are not somewhat demanding. So sometimes your personal life goes downhill or whatnot. But it kind of depends where you live. But it seems like it's around $100,000 where people have everything they need, they have extra money, but maybe they're not getting called all the time for work.
I'd like to be the guinea pig in this experiment.
Yes, so see how much you can make before you're unhappy.
You'll discover more money, more problems. All right, Keith, thanks so much. Stay with us. We have weather next.
If you get murdered in the city of Portland, there's a good chance your family could anguish for years over who did it. Darian Richardson was murdered 8 years ago. No arrests. Matt Blanchard's family, 6 years. No closure. David Anderson's family, 2 years. Brian Garcia, 1 year and waiting. 4 of 11 Portland homicide victims over the last decade whose killers have not been caught. You've heard their stories all week. Now it's time to hear from Portland police. The question is simple. Why? The answer, not so much.
When it comes to solving a murder, the pressure is on in the first 48 hours.
Within the first 48 hours, statistically, if you haven't been able to develop a suspect, it's going to be a difficult case to prove. And we certainly see that on a regular basis.
This is a critical time, not just for victims' families, but for communities. Cities that solve crimes are safer. We wanted to know how Maine's 2 major cities, Portland and Bangor, stack up when it comes to making arrests for murders. News Center Maine spent 6 months gathering and analyzing extensive homicide investigation data. Before showing you our findings, it helps to understand how homicide investigations are carried out in Maine. Portland and Bangor police are the only 2 departments in the state that investigate their own homicide cases. State police handle the rest. Our investigation reveals that in the 10-year period from 2007 to 2017, the Portland Police Department solved 57% of its homicides. That's 6% lower than the national average, 30% lower than the state of Maine. and 43% lower than the city of Bangor, which has solved every single murder for the last 10 years.
What's your reaction to those numbers?
Well, we'd obviously like to see it at 100% for sure.
Portland Police Assistant Chief Vern Malik, a 32-year veteran of the department, says that while the numbers are unfortunate, he's comfortable with the fact that Portland follows a national trend.
There's been a trend since the 1990s across the country of fewer and fewer homicides being solved.
True, and we'll get back to that in a minute. First, why such a drastic difference in clearances between the two local departments?
I'm not familiar with what the Bangor numbers are, and I'm not familiar with what the state cases are either. And I think you'd have to do a lot more research into the individual cases to see what exactly they are.
So you can't speak to any kind of possible general challenges that the department may face?
Well, I can say that one of the difficulties that we have is when cases are drug-related, they're a lot more difficult to solve. But, not knowing what the Bangor cases look like, I really couldn't comment.
Fair point. So we went back to the drawing board and broke down the numbers.
In the 10-year period we're looking at, Bangor had 18 homicide cases. Portland had 26. In Bangor, 7 of those cases were fights that ended in murder. 4 were domestic violence cases, 3 involved children, 2 were random, and 2 were drug-related. All of those cases were solved.
We see a significant number of our homicides are drug-related, and those are particularly vexing.
If we look at all of Portland's cases, 11 of them were fights that ended in murder, 5 domestic violence cases, 4 either unknown cause or it hasn't been publicized, 2 were self-defense cases, 1 random, and 3 were drug-related. So proportionately speaking, both cities had about the same percentage of drug-related homicides, but nearly half the cases in Portland are still open.
We brought our detailed information about each case back to the assistant chief 2 weeks later, but he still wouldn't talk specifics of a potential Portland police problem.
I can't speak to that except to say that I have no information at all about the Bangor cases.
Do you still feel like you can blame a lower clearance number on drug-related homicides if Bangor has the same situation?
I'm not going to say why Bangor solved 100% of their crimes. I can tell you that there was a 10-year period where Portland had a 100% clearance rate in homicides as well.
He's right. From 1998 to 2008, Portland solved all its homicides. In the 10 years since, 11 homicides, nearly half, have gone unsolved. In our first interview, Malik told us homicides are the most serious crimes Portland PD investigates.
And we put all of our resources behind investigating those.
Again, we crunched the numbers. Portland's population is twice the size of Bangor's. Its police force has more than 140 officers, while Bangor's has 76. Both departments have a 12-detective unit that investigates homicides. We asked Chief Malik if he feels that a 12-detective unit is enough for Maine's biggest city.
I don't feel that having a pool of 12 detectives that could potentially investigate what averages out to be 2 homicides a year is inadequate. So I'm very comfortable with the staffing levels that we have.
When asked about those lower clearance rates,
do you see that as a problem, or do you see that as just the way it is?
I always want to have a 100% clearance rate.
In our first conversation, Malik said more communication with the public could help close these cold cases.
As a matter of fact, your interview and questions that you've asked have prompted us to look at our website and say, why did we wait 2 years to put it on the website? So why not 6 months?
So that list of unsolved homicides on your website, you wait 2 years before you actually put the profile up?
That's what we have been doing in the past, yeah, but I think we're ready to change that now and perhaps go to within 6 months.
When we came back with more questions 2 weeks later, he walked it back.
2 years seems to be an average that departments look at.
So is that something that has been decided that will change, or?
No, we haven't had any further discussions on that.
Malik says he doesn't see a need for change in the department.
We are always looking to improve, no matter what it is. We're looking to improve. But at this point, there isn't any glaring shortfall that we need to address.
A clearance rate below the state and national average. For victims' loved ones, it's not about numbers. It's about knowing who and why. Malik says it's up to witnesses to come forward and help solve these murders.
Do you foresee any need for change?
I don't know what we would do differently right now. I feel like we are putting 100% of our resources behind it.
So if you missed any part of these series, we encourage you to go on our websites or mobile apps. All of our stories are posted there, as well as several digital extras that people can look into as well.
All right, Christina, thanks for all your hard work on that series.
Of course.
All right, it's going to be like San Diego next week. Come on, Keith, give it to me.
Well, first things first, though, you know we have some snow in between, or you just skip that?
Whatever.
Mentally just skip that. That's fine. I think a lot of people are doing that. High temperatures today, relatively mild, 45 in Wiscasset, 48 in Sanford. Didn't feel all that nice, though, right, because it was rainy and a lot of clouds around in between. Overnight, though, it's going to be cold, so flash freeze for sure as temperatures drop into the single digits in the mountains, teens even along the coastline, and that happens quickly on northwest winds. So I don't think usually water on the road freezes, but I think this is the case where that could happen tonight. And you can see the last of the rain moving out, some snow showers as well. That's marking that colder air. So typically the precipitation is here, and then the cold air is back up into Canada. It'll move through quickly tonight, but out towards Calais right now and into Holton, there is some light snow moving through. That's done by later on tonight. Temperatures crash by the early morning, getting into the single digits, and again, teens to low 20s along the coastline. Tomorrow is a bright day, but it's relatively cold. Temperatures only in the 20s to around freezing. Clouds increase tomorrow afternoon, and here comes some snow that Lee just wiped from his memory. Tomorrow night and through Sunday morning. A lot of this does happen overnight, though, and then the snow's out of here 8, 9 o'clock for most of us, and it leaves behind about 1 to 3 inches. Computer models had been a little bit in disagreement about this prior, but I think they're in decent enough alignment, and I also think boundary layer temperatures are going to be relatively warm to start, so we might melt the first ½ inch to 1 inch of this. So I think 1 to 3 will cover most of us, maybe 1 inch or so in the mountains. By the way, Sunday looks like a great day for skiing as it's mild. Not this mild, though. Look at Tuesday's high temperatures and into Wednesday. Wednesday's your chance to be breaking some records. And at first, when the models were doing this, we were a little bit hesitant to even talk too much about it, but they've been very consistent. So it's going to be mild Tuesday and Wednesday. The question really is, are we talking 60 or are we talking 70 degrees? And that's going to be the difference between those 2 days. By the way, it's worth noting, it's not going to be beautiful and sunny on Wednesday. With these warm temperatures, it will likely be cloudy during that time period.
Somehow I feel like we're going to get through that.
Yeah. Also, by the way, every time you guys say San Diego, I think you're saying Man Diego, and that would be a great title for someone's bachelor party.
Right. Yes, I think
to San Diego.
That is not where I'm going.
Yes.
Nope. But thanks for going there.
Exactly.
Don't promote his hashtag.
Keith, thanks so much. All right, coming up in the next half hour, students are taking action to create change in their own schools. At Mount Desert Island, it started with just a few and then blossomed into a school-wide statement about gun violence in America.
And owning your own business is a dream for many. Can the state help you with some startup money? Those stories ahead, but first, we'll have a live report from South Korea coming up next. All right, spoiler alert. The Olympic medal standings are coming up.
Norway expanding its lead with a total of 19 medals so far. After disappointing performances in slalom and men's singles, United States still has a total of 8 medals and is in 5th place. Well, 2 of the most hyped up athletes fell a bit short yesterday. Paul Gerke joins us now from South Korea. Paul, there's a lot of pressure on these kids, and we do mean kids, right?
Yeah, Lee and Lindsay, so far youth has been served here in South Korea. It seems like the 17 and 18-year-olds are the ones winning the medals for the United States. Some of the favorites here had a chance to get in medal position or win medals yesterday, but it was a bit of a mixed bag. It was nice to see the Team USA hockey squad pick up a win. That was solid, but it was mostly disappointment for the rest of Team USA. Michaela Schifrin coming up painfully short of the podium in her favorite event. And despite fielding a roster of 3 legitimate medal threats on the ice, Team USA's men's figure skating hopes of medaling are on thin ice. The men's short program could have been a dream. Instead, it was a nightmare for Nathan Chen. The 18-year-old quad king failed to land a single clean jump, finishing with the 17th best score and barely qualifying for the free skate.
It was honestly really rough. just nothing really went the way that I wanted it to, but it is what it is. Just move on from here.
Chen's teammates Adam Rapon and Vincent Joe fared better, but are still far from podium position. Less than 24 hours after earning gold in the giant slalom, heartache for the world's most dominant female skier, Mikaela Shiffrin, who finished 4th in the slalom, just 0.08 of a second from medaling.
Wasn't my day. I've had a lot of great days in slalom this season, and I skied really conservative today, not like myself at all.
But good news on the ice. 2 goals from Ryan Donato helped the men of Team USA edge Slovakia 2-1.
It was a pretty amazing moment for me and the whole team.
You guys, I can't wait for that game. First place in the group on the line, Team USA in Russia. That's tonight for us here in South Korea. It's about 7:10 in the morning for you guys tomorrow, so make sure you set an alarm. And you don't have to set an alarm for prime time tonight. I think that if Lindsey Vonn in the Super G can't keep you awake, nothing else will, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be a lot of people looking forward to seeing Lindsey Vonn. It's been a long time since she's been on skis. All right, News Center 5:30 is going to be coming up in just a little bit.
And also Ozone tonight too, right?
Ozone coming up tonight at 7:30 with Bill Green and I, and that's very exciting because we're going to talk about more Lindsey Vonn.
Sounds good.
So remember I was saying News Center 5:30?
Yes.
It starts right now.